We're now on Daf Kufyu Daladam and Beis. How do you know that an Easter of Bas B'cholav with the milk and its own mother's meat? Ahmed Kal V'chomer, we have a Kal V'chomer. And again, we're going to go through the whole system with a Kal V'chomer and then a Pircha and a Kal V'chomer because we have a Ribui. We don't know why we need the Ribui. Ma b'makom shelo nesa pri im pri b'shchita. Okay, we're now talking about Oso v'espino lo sishchetu b'yom echad in the case of two offspring, right? Two sibling animals. And the halacha is that there's no Isser. So pri is mutter. Right? You can check the two offspring on the same day. And yet, Nesar pri im ha'em b'shchita, right? The Isser of lo sishchetu b'yom echad applies to the mother and the offspring. Is makom shenesa pri im pri bebishul, enudin shenesa pri im ha'em bebishul. So we have a chumrah of the mother and her pri, that they cannot be slaughtered on the same day. And therefore, it goes without saying, according to this Kal V'chomer, that the chalav, which is the pri of the mother, cannot be cooked with the mother. Because if you cannot shech the mother and its kid on the same day, then the Isa Bishop Chalav, which is again like an offspring, because we're defining the Chalav as the offspring of its mother, cannot be cooked on together. Again, there's no human logic over here. This is shall I say, a midah shaTorah nidreshes by it. This is just the way we interpret the Torah. And we have something called pri and pri. And there's no Isser Shchita of B'yom Echad of pri and pri. And yet there's a Shchita of Yom Echad in the mother with its pri, her pri. And therefore, how much more so the mother with her pri in the case of Chalav. Chalav is the pri of the mother. I mean, again, in your wildest dreams, I don't think you'd ever come up with this idea that the milk is a pri to the mother. I mean, you're talking about an offspring. And then once again, Talmud Lomer v'chalav imo ha lama likra ha asule amar avach deboy bari mishum deika lememer. Now we're going to have a pircha. And what's going to be the nature of the pircha? Let's just get the structure of it without filling in the details so we understand. We're going to try to prove that pri could be asur, and yet pri with its mother would be mutter, which slugs up the whole Kal V'chomer. Where do we find that pri is asur? And now we're talking again about harba, about crossbreeding. No. Just one second. Forget about crossbreeding. Scratch that. There's so many different parts of the sugya. Oh yeah, we are talking about crossbreeding. Okay. So what do we have over here in this case? Mishum dikve sus ben susya achi pirda yochia. So we're not allowed to crossbreed a horse, a sus with a pirda. Now, how can you have a pirda, a mule, and a horse that are two brothers when they belong to two different species, and you're not allowed to crossbreed them, and it becomes pri-u-pri? So it turns out that the mother of this horse had a relationship with a mule, and out of that relationship came a whatchamacallit, a pirda. That pirda is an offspring to its mother that's a horse. Its father is a mule. And if that mother horse had a relationship with another horse, a male horse, that product, which is a male horse, cannot be bred together with its own brother, meaning its maternal brother, the mule. Again, we could chart this out. It would be easier, but we don't have time for that. So that's called asur b'pri impri. Umuter pri im ha'em. Now, this is a little bit tricky, but really what it means is that you can crossbreed the horse with the mother. Just 1 second. Right, because the mother is also a horse. So there's no Issa crossbreeding. So here you have a case where pri is asur, like the two brothers, one of which has a father who's a horse, and the other has a father who's a mule. But it's called pri because they both have the same mother. And yet there's an Isur crossbreeding. So you have a case now, a breakthrough case of pri that's asur. And yet Prima Aim, if let's say he would want to crossbreed the horse with its own mother, and she's a horse, you're allowed to do so. So that is a pircha that completely undermines the Kal V'chomer. And therefore we justify the need for a pasuk, a ribui. Because the whole Kal V'chomer is built on the fact that there was no Isur Pri Min Pri, and here, in the case of crossbreeding, there's an Isur Pri Min Pri, so that completely destroys the Kal V'chomer. But here, it's not really Pri. Why? Because the horse and the mule are only maternal brothers, but they each have a different father. Hasam, the Gemara says that's not a pircha, that's not really pri, because zera ha'avhu de kogarm. The determining factor is the father. And here, the horse has a father who's a horse, the mule has a father who's a mule, and therefore it's asur, but it's not because of pri. It's because of zera ha'av. And I'll prove it to you. The pered ben susya achi pirda yochiach shemuter pri the asur pri im ha'em. We're going to slug up the Kal V'chomer. Why? Because if you have a male mule who's the son of a susya, but is also the brother of a female mule, so it's pri. Both mules are the product of the donkey with the mule. The asur, and even though it's mutter, but also pri me'em. So now we have completely destroyed the pircha, and we have to come up with another pircha to destroy the kal v'chomer, justify the ribui of chalav imo. Elo amar ma breder avinu mishum de ikol memer eved ben shivcha achi mishucheres yolchia. Okay, so now we enter into the laws of a shivcha. Now the eved of a shivcha, the son of a shivcha is an eved. But here, in this case, we have a union between an eved and a shivcha mishuchreres. Shivcha mishuchreres means that the shivcha received a get shichur, she was freed, and she automatically becomes a Jewess. And of course, her biological brother is not allowed to have relations with her because her biological brother is an eved. So now you have a case of pri, and it's awesome. Before we slugged up pri in the case of crossbreeding because it went after the zera'ah. But what are we going to do here? It's pri because this shivcha had a son and a daughter. The daughter was emancipated and therefore she became a Jewess, and she can no longer marry her brother who's an eved, because an eved can't marry a Jewess. And now we have pri, and it's awesome. Sha'asur pri. And yet, muta pri im ha'em, which is really fascinating. But if you take the Gemara literally, it means that the son could have relations with his own mother because he's an eved and she's a shivcha. Again, the Rishonim, as we'll see later on, are going to talk about a slightly different scenario, because a union between a son and a mother is an incestuous relationship. So how could the Gemara say mutter im ha'em? In any event, the Torah is saying that you're not allowed to cook to be mevashel the gedi with its mother's milk. And as we said before, that's considered pri because the milk is a pri and the kid is a pri. And the Torah says that's awesome. But when it comes to cooking the milk of that mother that after shechita you're cooking with that meat, I don't know what the story would be. Perhaps the Torah would be matir. Just like in the case of the mother shivcha with her son who's an eved, where the Torah was matir. And therefore, the kal v'chomer is invalid and we need the pasuk. Gemara slugs this up as well. Chasam get shichur hu de kagarin. This has nothing to do with the fact that it's pri, meaning that the brother who's an eved is prohibited with his sister who's a giores by virtue of the fact that she received the get shichur, but rather it's get shichur hu de kagarin. Which I believe the Gemara means to say that she's Jewish and he's not Jewish. It has nothing to do with the fact that two products of the same mother, two offsprings, are usher one to the other. Priu is usher. And I'll prove it to you. Da Eved ben Mishuchreres, right? How about the son of a shivcha who received the get shichur? Achi shivcha. So again, the mother is a shivcha. And she gives birth to a son and a daughter. The mother then got to get shichur, but not the children. And the brother can marry his sister because he's an evidence she's a shivcha. So we have two products, pri, and yet they're allowed to have a relationship one with the other. And it's mutter. We were basing ourselves on pri and pri is awesome. Here's a case of pri and pri that's mutter. The mother who already received the get shichur is prohibited to have a relationship with her son, who's an Evan, because she got to get shichur after she gave birth to him. So shemuta pri and pri, right? This shivcha had two children, a male and a female. They're allowed to have relations. Vi also pri ma'em. Because the mother already received to get shichur. Ela Omer Avidi bar Ov Mishum deikol Memer Kelai Zroim Yochichu Sha'asur Pri and Pri. Here's a case of Asur Pri and Pri. Why? Again, this is not human logic. But we're viewing the karka, the earth itself, as the mother giving birth to the seeds. And that parallels Gedi b'chalei v'imo. So how do you have pri? The earth gives birth to two different seeds that belong to two different species. And you're not allowed to mix plant them together. And yet mutter priyim ha'em. Right? You can plant the seed with its mother, so to speak, meaning the earth itself. So therefore, in the case of cooking a kid in its own milk, again, if it was cooking the kid in its mother's milk, then it would be asur, and it's pri. But yet, to plant it with the earth, it's mutter. So therefore I would say that planting in the earth is like cooking the milk of the mother with the mother itself, with the mother's own, and I would say it's mutter. And therefore I need a pasuk to prohibit it. So the Gemara rejects. Why? Klum nesa pri and pri el al yidei aim. Right? If you have two different species, the Iser Kalayim forbids you to plant them together and cross-plant them. And this Iser is generated by the earth, the aim. Dochiti v'sari b'kadav lo mitzur. If let's say you didn't put it in the earth, but rather you put barley, kernels of barley, kernels of wheat in the same pot, then there's no Isa. So you see that the Iser here is al yidei ha'em. Lomar Rav Ashi mishum deikal ameim mala pri and pri shekain shnei gufim tomar bepriyim ha'em shekain guf echad mishum hachi itzer kra. Okay, then. Let's just add 5 more minutes, and then it's Erev Shabbos. Omer Rav Ashi b'nai lebasa b'chol shasa b'achila shenemar lo sochal kol to'eva kol shetiavti l'cha hu b'bal tochal. Since I told you not to cook them together, then obviously that's called a to'eva, and therefore you're not allowed to eat them together. And Rav Ashi says, "Ainli ela b'achila b'hanominan." How do I derive the Isra no? And now we get to the sugya of Rabbi Avo, Kid Rabbi Avo, very famous sugya in Psachim. The Omer Rabbi Avo, Omer Rabbi Loza, Kol Mokom Shenemar Lo Sochal, Lo Yochal, Lo Sochal, Lo Sochlu, Echad Isur Achila V'Chazal Isur Hano B'Mashma. So Achila includes Hano unless I know otherwise. How do I see that? Right, by Nevela, the Torah had to tell you that the Nevela is Mutter B'Hano. And where did the Torah say that? You're allowed to take the nevela and give it to a ger. Ger means a ger toshav, a resident alien. He translates it, and you give it to him as a gift, or alternatively, you could take the nevela and sell it to a guy. So now we get to the sheet of Rabbi Meir. How do you know you're allowed to sell it to a ger toshav? Now the opposite. How do you know that you could give it as a gift to a guy? and there's no Isur Lo Sichanim, Talmud Lomer Titneno O Mochel and Nochri Nimtza. Echad Ger v'Echad of Kom Beid Mechir Beid Nesidah Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Dvarim Kiksavam. No. We have to take the pasuk literally. Leger ben Esino, you can't sell it to a ger. Le'avi kacham mechira, you can't give it as a gift to a guy. My time of the Rabbi Yehuda, Ishal gedai to Rabbi Meir, if Rabbi Meir is correct, and the heter mechira and the heter nesina would include both the ger and the akum, is then Lichtov Rachmana lo sochlu kol nevela lager asher b'shrech nitnenu v'acholu mocha. It should have mentioned so one second, it should have said what? Kol nevela lager asher b'shrech nitnenu v'acholu mocha. In other words, it should have combined the gift together with the sale to tell you that you have both options. And if you have a ger toshav, you're allowed to sell it to the ger toshav. And yet the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says, lager asher bisharechet titnenu achola. Oh means stop. Like in the old telegrams, stop. Machol and giving you two options. Farm kiksava mudiyasa. The ger ben esina as a gift. The ovikol chavim b'chira to sell. But Meir Amari responds, hi, that's not the purpose of the O. The O is not telling you that you have an either-or situation, but that you have a preferable situation. You get a bigger kiyum if you give it as a gift to a ger, because we want to give him chiyus, as opposed to an akel. So we need that not sequence, but a priority. So we need that priority. Rabbi Yehuda, lahaktim nesina leger, he's a little tzarkra, svaro zeh. I don't need a special pasuk to teach me that I want to give the nevela as a gift to the ger. I know that logically because the Torah says that I have to sustain the ger. He's living amongst you, and you have to sustain it. And that's where we stop. Because at this particular point, we're going to go ahead and challenge that premise of Rav Ashi, who says that anything that's a to'eva must be osur b'achil. And then you have a mnemonic device here, Simon, Shabbos Choresh, Kilayim, Zroim, Osov Espino, V'shiluch HaKam. So we'll just read one line, Elameata Maisa Shabbos li tasru. Right, I prohibited you from doing labor on Shabbos. The product of that violation of that labor, of that toeva, should be also v'achila. And yet we know that although the Torah prohibits labor on Shabbos, and that's abhorred, it's a toeva, according to Rav Ashi, the product of such a labor should also be a toeva, it should be osam achila. And yet we have a brisa, which we learned back on Daf Tes Vav, that if you cook on Shabbos, chas v'shalom, then anybody else is allowed to eat it except for you, because that's a knas d'rabbanan, they shouldn't be nene from the malacha, but it's permitted for consumption. Why would the product of a toeva of labor on Shabbos be permitted for consumption? And Omer Crow, we're going to have to derive this from a special pasuk, Kodesh Yilachem, He Kodesh, V'ein Maaseha Kodesh. So if you take a look back at the mnemonic device on the bottom of Daf Kuf Yud Daled, you'll see the first one is Shabbos, and the second one is Choresh. And that's where the Gemara is going to now approach Chorish. And again, try to prove that even though you violated an Isur, the product of that Isur is Mut. Okay, then, so that's where we'll stop. So we have a homework assignment here for Shabbos, Kuf Tes Vav, and Amir Hashem, B'Yom Rishon, Kuf Tes Zayin. Thank you so much. Have a great Shabbos.